Today we are going to look at a World War I country fact file that I have written for a project. As you can see, it says in bracket speech marks, it was a genuinely global war, and it is absolutely right. All four corners of the earth, north, south, east and west, all involved in this horrific incident, and this is how and why all these countries got involved. The first country on the list is the German Empire, one of the main players of all the war. They did not start off the war as many people believe, but they were a main player, and they were probably one of the head central power. As I said, they were not the first country to becoming involved on the 1st of August 1914. They did declare war on the following: Russia, France, Belgium, Portugal and Romania, just to protect either them or their allies, or to make sure they do not stop them from invading other countries. But war was declared on them by a lot of countries: UK, Serbia, Montenegro, Japan, Italy, Greece, Qing Dynasty and USA, and 14 other nations, which is the record. It's just because German Empire was so powerful, and they were not very good. They did really mean things, and they did offensive things, and they started declaring war on everybody, and that made all their allies turn on them and declare on them. Their leader, the mastermind of all this craziness, Kaiser Wilhelm II, tried to expand his empire all over Europe, but failed to do so, because after the war he fled to Holland. Which side? Of course, the Central Powers. They led the Central Powers. They were like the head of all it. They just wanted to dominate the world. The number of soldiers, a cracking 11 million soldiers, tried and failed to keep Germany alive, but unfortunately 1,773,700 of those had lost their lives. Serbia. There is a picture of a propaganda poster of Serbia, as they were the first country to get involved on the war, as they became involved on the 28th of July 1914, due to the fact that an assassin from Serbia, Gavrilo Princip, and the Black Hand Gang assassinated and killed Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. Now, Russia told Germany to stop Austria-Hungary becoming mad and killing and destroying Serbia. But when Germany refused, then Serbia declared war on Germany, as it states here. They also declared war on the Ottoman Empire, their neighbours. But war was declared on them by Austria-Hungary due to the fact of the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, and Bulgaria, because they were main allies of Austria-Hungary, and they were bordering Serbia, so they just attacked it. Their leader, Peter I, objected to the Black Hand Gang's actions and said, "This was all a mistake, please do not destroy us." But unfortunately, Peter I was absolutely wrong. The side was allies. They started the allies. The number of soldiers, despite being a smaller country than today, they have only 707,453 soldiers, of which 45,000 lost their lives. Italy. They were a surprise at the war. Despite being in a triple alliance with Germany and Austria-Hungary, They became involved on the 23rd of May 1915, only to do an about-face on them to declare war on all four Central Power nations: Germany, Austria-Hungary, Ottoman Empire and Bulgaria. So, because their leader, Vittorio Emanuele Orlando, objected. They did not want to be in alliance with Germany and Austria-Hungary. So, he did an about-face and turned his back on Kaiser Wilhelm and Emperor Franz Joseph. Which side? Of course, the Allies. They just attacked Germany, and the number of soldiers, despite being a big country, they only have 5,615,000 soldiers, but 650,000 lost their lives and died during the war. Ottoman Empire, the main Asian Central Power. They were ruled by Turkey, and they controlled lots of Arabia, which was then called Najd, and they declared war on Najd, as you can see here. Romania and USA were also fated by the Ottoman Empire's troops, but because there was a Central Power, lots of countries declared war on them, including Russia, Serbia, Montenegro, Great Britain, Italy, France, Greece, and Siam, which is nowadays Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam. Their leader is Sultan Mehmed V, who he wanted to rule all Arabia, but yet unable to. So therefore he joined the Central Powers against Kingdom of Najd. The number of soldiers, despite being a big country, it had only 2,850,000 soldiers, which is pretty small for a country its size. And then the number of deaths, which is unfortunately 325,000. Qing Dynasty, which is nowadays China, became involved on the penultimate year of the war, on the 14th of August, nearly a whole 3 years after the war started. They declared war on the following: Germany and Austria-Hungary, but they were not a big superpower like today, despite controlling most of Mongolia. Their leader was Mao Zedong, the last ruler from the Qing Dynasty, which is nowadays China. Qing Dynasty did not have very many troops. But it is officially known, but it's not officially known how many troops or deaths they had. They obviously were in the Allies, supporting their allies Russia, and they did not want the Ottoman Empire to rule Arabia. The Japanese Empire. Japan had a much expanded empire, controlling some of the outer islands and a little bit of Korea. The Japanese Empire was involved on the 23rd of August 1914, which was just only 20 days after most of the other countries joined. They did not get declared war on by anyone, but they declared war on Germany and Austria-Hungary, mainly because they were the two main powers. Their leader was Emperor Taisho, which was allies at the time with USA, and because USA joined reluctantly, Japan joined before them and encouraged USA to join. Which side? Of course, the Allies, but they had a small 800,000 soldiers, which only 3,000 lost their lives, which is pretty good. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, the country that started it all off, the main central power after Germany. They became involved on the 28th of July 1914, the first country to be involved after Serbia. They declared war on the following: Serbia for revenge against murdering their heir to the throne. Russia, they wanted to protect Germany. Belgium, because Germany declared war on Belgium. Romania and Portugal are unknown. But war was declared on them by neighbours Montenegro, France, Great Britain, South Africa, Canada, Dominion of Newfoundland, Japan, Italy, San Marino, and 8 other countries. Their leader was the father of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, Emperor Franz Joseph, who had a conference with the German Empire's leader Kaiser Wilhelm II, and eventually made them join the war. And they had 7,800,000 soldiers, because they were the second biggest country in Europe at the time, and the number of deaths was a sad 1,200,000. The Union of South Africa. As you can see on this poster, the big line is Great Britain, and these are all Canada, Newfoundland, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. But just due to the fact that they were part of the British Empire there, they still declared war on one more country or territory than Great Britain. They declared war on the German territory of Namibia, which was part of the German Empire, but they became involved on the same day as Great Britain due to the British Empire. Their leader was King George V of England at the time, which side, of course, the Allies, with the number of soldiers, this is calculated as the whole of British Empire, 8,904,467 soldiers, with a mass number of 908,371 deaths. Montenegro, a key ally of Serbia and Greece. They became involved on the 3rd of August 1914. Here's a picture of some soldiers from there. They declared war on the following: all 4 nations. They wanted to just rule, but they were allies, fortunately. Their leader, Pavel Jurisic, was really good allies with Peter I, and together they wanted to destroy Austria-Hungary and Bulgaria on 2 separate sides. The number of soldiers, despite being a small country, they had 50,000, of which 3,000, the same as Japan, died. Russian Empire, the biggest country in the world like today, with more land, but they became involved on the 1st of August 1914. They declared war on only the Ottoman Empire and Bulgaria, but because they got declared war on by Germany and Austria-Hungary. Their leader at the start of the war was Tsar Nicholas II, but because the Russian Revolution, which turned Russian Empire into Soviet Union or USSR, happened in the middle of the war, turned Vladimir Lenin into the president of Russia, leaving Russia to quit World War I. The side was obviously the Allies, like World War II, and the soldiers, and they were a massive country, had 1 million more soldiers than Germany, 12 million soldiers, with record deaths of 1,700,000. The United States of America, picture of Uncle Sam there, which is showing much propaganda for the USA, became involved on the 6th of April 1917, penultimate year of World War I. They declared war on the following: Germany and Austria-Hungary, but they got declared war on by Ottoman Empire and Bulgaria. Their leader was President Woodrow Wilson, who, at the end of World War I, had a Treaty of Versailles in Paris with the leaders of most of the Allied nations. Which side was the Allies, of course, because Alaska and Hawaii were not states of the America yet. They only had 48 stars, which means they only had 4,355,000 soldiers, which only a sad 116,516 lost their lives. Bulgar state, otherwise known as Bulgaria, was a main central power. They became involved a little bit later than the other central powers, but they declared war on Serbia, Romania and USA. They declared war on Serbia and Romania because they were the closest allied powers near them. USA just to protect, research shows that I do not know why, but war was declared on them by Great Britain, Montenegro, France, Italy, Russia and the Kingdom of Greece, but that's not as much as many of the other central powers, which had lots of declarations of war. Their leader was Tsar Ferdinand I, mastermind of Bulgaria. And they were the central powers, of course, the fourth nation to join the central powers and the last. The number of soldiers, despite being a small country, had 1,200,000 soldiers, but sadly 87,500 died. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. Whole of Ireland was part of Britain then, and Lord Kitchener there in that photo with the propaganda. They became involved on the 4th of August 1914, which was pretty early, but they declared war on all four Central Powers nations. Their leader was King George V of England, which is now was the Queen of England's grandfather. The side was, of course, the Allies, and they were the main in the Western Front in the trenches. They were the main lead. They had the most population of Britons in the Allied trenches, and the most populations in the Central Powers was German. The number of soldiers was 8,904,467, but sadly 908,371 died from our country. The Belgian Kingdom, they were neutral at first, but due to the fact that Britain declared war on Germany because they were getting invaded by Germany, Belgium immediately joined the Allies on the 4th of August 1914. But they did not declare war on anybody because they were too scared. Well, they weren't too scared, but they did not want to get any more invasions. So they declared war on Germany and Austria-Hungary. Their leader was Brave Albert I, who did not like the sight when he saw this destroyed Belgium. And much of the Western Front ran through Flanders, a region of Belgium in which the poem by John McCrae, In Flanders Fields, is set. The number of soldiers was 267,000, which is quite a lot for a neutral country, but sadly 13,716 was fatalities. And the final country is the French Third Republic. The Third Republic of France became involved on the 3rd of August 1914. Here is a picture of German soldiers marching through Paris in the Champs-Élysées, right beneath the Arc de Triomphe, which is usually where the Tour de France ends. But they declared war on the following: Austria-Hungary, Ottoman Empire and Bulgaria, but Germany, because they took control of the regions of France, Alsace and Lorraine. They declared war on them. Their leader was President Georges Clemenceau, who absolutely hated it when the German soldiers marched through France, Paris, and took over. Parisians were also very devastated. They obviously joined the Allies immediately, and the number of soldiers was 8,410,000, and the number of deaths was 1,357,800. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for listening. This has been a pleasure.